Whether you love your job, you're great at it, but you're finding yourself burnt out and unfulfilled, or you're not sure what path to take in your career or your life, or you are having a really hard time finding any sense of flow and ease and success in what you're doing with your current life. In any of these situations, which are totally normal, there is something available to you, your zone of genius. Do you have one? If you do, how do you start living there primarily? Are you allowed to live there? Do you deserve it? What will people think? And can you really make a living that way? Today on Allowed, you will be getting practical tips for moving your life into one where you are living primarily in your zone of genius, that place where you find effortless flow and you create value by using the natural gifts that you love to use. You are allowed to succeed without suffering. You are allowed to bring a ton of value into your life, your company, your community, and your family in a way that comes easily to you. You're allowed to enjoy it so much you would even pay to do it. You are allowed to love what you do. Let's start the show. Allowed.
When you were born, you were whole, perfect. Then somewhere along the way, you learned that parts of you were not allowed here, and you began to chip away at yourself. What are the pieces of you that you've put into the basement? The parts of you that we cannot see anymore or that you cannot even remember? What are the ways that you, without even knowing it, are eroding your own aliveness, your creativity, and your well-being? And how can you reclaim the wholeness that is your birthright? I'm Dr. Caneel Joyce, and I'm here to join you in exploring these questions and many more you didn't even know you were allowed to ask. You are allowed to grow. You're allowed to dream. You are allowed to be exactly who you are and to become the next version of who you want to be. Start your journey of exploration with me right now on Allowed. Allowed. You are allowed to be whole.
Hello again, my friends and fearless leaders. It is Caneel, your host of Allowed. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I have really been enjoying your feedback and questions that you've been leaving for me in the reviews on social. They're coming in from every direction, and I've really been moved hearing about your journeys. Special shout out to that dear friend who wrote me yesterday and said that this is the first podcast she's ever listened to. She plans to listen to every episode and that she's really going through a rough patch and really, really needs this right now. I can't tell you how much those little messages mean to me and my team, and knowing that we are reaching you and that this is helpful and this is supportive. And, that's why we're doing this. I actually received that message yesterday while I was waiting for my mom up on the rooftop of a hotel in Hollywood. My mom is just an amazing woman who's been a really big inspiration to me, and we have a lot of fun together. But now that I've got little kids, I hardly ever really get to have one-on-one time with her. So I was super excited when she invited me to go to a sound healing on the rooftop of the one hotel in West Hollywood. And a sound healing, if you've never done one, which is a pretty new thing for me too, is where there's a person who's kind of a healing type person, and they've got some really beautiful instruments like crystal bowls or Tibetan bowls. They've got some gong drums and other little magical instruments that send you sound, and it's at a vibration that really impacts you at the cellular level. So apparently there are doctors who are now using sound healing on all of their cancer patients and having really positive results for that. So it's both a really relaxing experience because you're just lying down and getting to listen to this music, but it also genuinely is really restorative. It somehow helps your brain go into theta waves, which is like a dream state. And if you know anything about dreaming, you know that dreaming is really where we integrate a lot of what we've learned. Last night was super special because we had a full moon in Taurus, which I didn't know until I got there, but It looked like a full moon to me. I happen to be a Taurus. So I was like, woohoo. I guess it's a great time to let go of things that are no longer serving you. So, on this episode, I'm excited for you to let go of what is no longer serving you and what is not in your own zone of genius. What is not fulfilling to you? What is not really making the best use of your natural gifts and strengths? What is holding you down, draining your energy, making you burnt out, stressed out, frustrated, even if you're experiencing a ton of success and a lot of pats on the back for doing it, which is often the case, right? We often are excellent high achievers, but yet what we are up to in the world, even though we might even love it, is not life-giving. It's not the thing that gives us energy. And so we can temporarily kind of push ourselves by stressing ourselves out or hurrying ourselves or making ourselves scared that what will happen if we don't do it. I've heard a lot of clients say that that's how they push themselves. When we push ourselves with that alone, we do get burnt out. We feel unfulfilled. Life feels kind of meaningless. And we're not really sure why we're here on some deeper level. So today I invite you, even though this episode will air long after the full moon in Taurus, I want you to still let go of the idea that maybe you need to suffer to succeed, that maybe this is just as good as it gets. This is life. This is the lot that was handed to us. And it's not that bad. And it's actually pretty good. And we actually like it in lots of ways. And it's okay that I'm not fulfilled. It's okay that I'm going to go to my grave, like wondering why I spent all my time at work. That's okay. No, it's not. On this episode, that's not okay. So we're going to learn about some practical stuff you can do to begin moving your life into your zone of genius, the place where I invite you to live primarily. Now, if you're wondering what is zone of genius, what is this person talking about here on this podcast, I invite you to go back to episode number 4. I did a little teaching about what is the zone of genius, what are the other zones of being. There are 4 zones of being. And why does it matter so much? I also shared my own personal story of finding myself stuck with a lot of back pain, my body speaking back to me that I was not living in my zone of genius, and how that in my story, my body really invited me to redesign my life, which led me into the path I'm in now, where I feel like I'm really living in my zone of genius. And it feels amazing. Like I walk around, I genuinely feel amazing every day while I'm walking around. It's awesome. So I invite you to go back to that episode to learn about the zone of genius if you haven't yet. But if you're on the move and pressing the buttons is not what's interesting to you right now and you want to stay right where you are, that's fine too, because the exercises that you will be receiving today are useful immediately, no matter how much or how little you actually even understand about this concept at a high level. So before we jump into the exercise, I want to just share with you a story of a dear friend of mine, a friend that I've known for 30 years. And this is relevant because the story I'm going to tell you took place over about a period of 30 years. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to get into too much detail here. But I want to share that this is one of the smartest, most successful, hardest working, most on it people that I know. Super organized, really just at ease wherever she shows up, polished, great at having conversations with a huge variety of people, just a powerful, really high achiever type of a person who did really well when we were in high school together and then went on to go to a great university. Right out of university, she was snapped up by one of the big consulting firms, one of the big, used to be the big 5 consulting firms. That's how old I am. Big 4 consulting firms, I think now. And this was a big deal, right? So these are not easy jobs to get. They're highly coveted. They're highly paid. And they provide a lot of on-the-job training. So she was very excited. We were all very, very excited for her. This was definitely her dream, her path, what she wanted to do. I remember us going out one night, maybe about 2 years after she began this job. And I was spending the night at her apartment in San Francisco. And we were up late. It was probably like 4 a.m. We were like up late and just, laying there, like kind of winding down for the night and talking about the fun time that we had. And then I was like, how's your work going? And she said, "Oh, yeah, it's fine, but like I'm so tired and it's really kind of a grind and but it's good." I said, "Have you ever thought about, changing your job?" She's like, "Oh, no." Like, and I could tell that she just didn't even really have the bandwidth to think about how that, if that move would be a good move for her. And she was very, very committed to being in this role. And then I asked her, "What are you working on?" And she described to me how what she had been working on for the past year and a half, and she would have to drive an hour and a half to get out to this client site. She would go to the client and she would take measurements of some of what the machines were doing in their manufacturing process. And she would take measurements of this and she would log them and put them in the computer and then analyze them and create reports and feed them up to her manager, who would feed it up to her manager and feed it up to the director and then over to the client. And I said, "Oh, okay. So did you know anything about this manufacturing process before?" "Oh, no, I didn't. So I'm learning about it." "Okay, interesting. Why does the client want you to do that?" And she paused and she was like, I've actually never even asked that question. I don't know. I don't know why I'm measuring these things for the last year and a half. And I don't know why we're sending it up there." And I started just getting really curious at that moment about what's the relationship between, our purpose in what we're doing, and the skills that we're getting to use to fulfill that purpose, with how satisfied we are in our job, and how does our job satisfaction connect to our sense of being burnt out and tired and like we're on a treadmill. And I've definitely had periods of my life where I felt like I was on a treadmill and I really wasn't sure why what I was doing was going to add up to anything important. I think without this sense of purpose, it's really challenging to bring your full self to the table. There's something important about the meaning of things to us as human beings. You could argue that nothing means anything, right? But as humans, we are meaning makers. There's something really important about knowing why we're doing something and why it matters to that calls us, that calls forth our natural talents, our natural gifts, the ones that we love to use, the ones that we're born with, and helps us organize them into a way that creates this unique recipe for value. Like, we are the only ones who can bring that value to the world. We are the only ones that have that special combination of gifts to bring. And knowing this friend as well as I did, I knew from her describing her job how much she was leaving on the table. Her biggest love was really her love of people. She was an amazing supporter of people. She was the person that whenever anybody was in crisis, they would call her. And she always was a very steady voice to listen to offer like a balance of support and maybe a little bit of constructive questioning and really helping you to get clear on how can I move forward. And she's offered me some very powerful, usually positive feedback in my life. And she really is a big reason why I am where I am today. And all of these people skills, they weren't even part of her job. And this was a big mismatch for me, but I was seeing it from the outside, right? I wasn't in there getting that big salary, having that big brand name on my resume, all of the goodies that come with that, getting flown around the country and so forth. So I also wasn't as busy as she was. So it was much easier for me to see from the outside that these skills of hers were not being utilized. So I was just wondering, I wonder when she's going to end up using these skills. Now, fast forward about 8 years, and she begins to experience, much like I did, some back pain. And she's feeling just really stressed out. I can see it in her body. Her shoulders are up, her back is tense, the look on her face, and not really a lot of sense of purpose. Like, that question kept coming up of what am I doing with my life? And I was very much in that same question at that era. So it was something that we got to talk about a lot. Eventually, she became so dissatisfied with her current job that she began looking around. Fortunately, this big company had lots of opportunities, so she was able to make a lateral move into a completely different department, which was human resources. Now, in order for her to get this job, given that she had no background in human resources as a technical field, she actually needed to go way down the ladder from where she was. She needed to accept lower pay, a smaller title in terms of the formal hierarchy. She needed to report up to way more people, have a lot less autonomy and responsibility. But for her, the content of the work was worth it because it was bringing forth that natural skill set that she had that connected to her passion for people and how much she wanted to support them. Long story short, she is now a major ass kicker and has, moved up very, very quickly and loved what she was doing and has continued to move up even as she's moved on to different companies, facing really, really interesting challenges that are near to dear to her heart, like diversity and inclusion, conflict management, training, leadership development, a lot of stuff that's really bringing her to life. And she feels, like my guest from 2 weeks ago said, she feels well used. She feels like what she's got to offer is going to good use. And this is energizing, right? You can see the vibrance in her face. You can see the change, and her whole entire lifestyle has become one filled with a lot more ease and love and richness and abundance. And it starts here on the inside. So, I've shared my story. I have countless others of people making changes within corporations, lateral moves like this, sometimes moves down, often, quitting a job, sometimes going out on their own and becoming a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, even just taking a break, for those who were able to have enough money to afford the ramen to make it through those dry periods, just taking a break to really check in and say, what really matters to me? What do I care about? What are the things that come easily to me where I am in flow? Those activities I do where I lose my sense of time and I love them so much, I would literally pay to do this thing. It brings me to life. It gives me energy. It restores me. It fulfills me. And I feel well used. And this is describing, in short, what's called your zone of genius. Go back to episode 4 for an exercise that can help you identify your zone of genius. And then let's dig in and see, how can you move into making your life one where you're living primarily in your zone of genius. And in case you don't have a pen and paper in hand, this checklist of 5 steps is available to you at Caneel.com. All right, ready for some steps? Here is step 1. First step is know your genius. There are so many ways to figure out what your zone of genius is. It's a fantastic book on zone of genius by Gay Hendricks, who's the first person that I learned about who wrote about this concept. It's also discussed in his book, The Big Leap, and in The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, and countless other places. So again, not my concept, but one that has been transformative for me and my clients. You can look at these books. You can also, in a few months, in a couple months here, is when we're going to be launching our Zone of Genius course, which is guiding you through a process of not just doing worksheets on your own and exercises with me and with the other members of the course, but also gathering feedback from the outside. So you can definitely do the work on your own. Getting feedback from others is really, really powerful. So in my leadership forum, my members gather feedback from 30 to 50 other people about, where do you see me adding value? How is the room different when I come in the room? What are the gifts that seem to light me up, that seem to give me life? So getting to know what your genius is as a life pursuit, it's a really fun, you could take a year just working on that alone. And it's a really, really fun and rewarding thing. And what my clients often find is they're surprised that people actually do see this genius in them that they've kind of always known was theirs, but they didn't know if it mattered. They didn't know if others could see it. They didn't know if it was valuable to anybody else. It seemed like, oh, everybody can do this. But when you hear 50 people describe you in a very, very similar way, something clicks. And almost always my clients cry. It's really, really powerful. So keep being curious about that. That is step number 1. Now, step number 2 is, let's look at your actual life. So knowing what your zone of genius is compared to, say, your zone of excellence, the zone that you're really good at it, because you work hard at it, but it's not necessarily what comes naturally or life-giving. Let's look at your calendar, okay? We've got these different zones: zone of genius, zone of excellence, zone of competence and incompetence. Again, you can read more elsewhere, but we want to analyze, how are you spending your time? So print up a couple weeks of your calendar. So I suggest looking over the course of 2 to 3 weeks. That's all you need, really. And looking at each event on the calendar and the ones that aren't even there that you know you'll be doing, in which ones do you feel that you will be in your zone of genius for at least 70% of the time, at least 70% of that meeting? So for me, my zone of genius is creating spaces of exquisite trust where transformation can happen. If I look at my calendar today, it's about 90% of my day, of my workday. And then I go home and it's about 80% of my home life as well. Because that's, while I might be doing other things while I'm at home, doing dishes, helping with homework, cooking, I am doing so from that place where I am creating a space of trust. So look at your calendar and just mark which ones are the ones where you're primarily in your zone of genius. And what is that roughly? What percentage of your time are you spending doing those activities? All right, now I want you to next step, make a list of all of your responsibilities. This could be all of your work duties, all of your home duties, anything else that you do, and which of those lies within your zone of genius. So I know for me, there are lots of activities that I used to spend a lot of my time doing, like statistical analysis, that was not in my zone of genius. I learned to be good at it. I actually did really, really enjoy it, but I became kind of a tense, cramped person when that was all I was spending my time on, and that was a big, huge part of my job when I used to be a business school professor. So you can check out, what are you responsible for and what gives you life there. The next exercise is a daily energy audit. And this is an exercise that I got from the Conscious Leadership Group. You can find them on conscious.is. We'll put a link in the show notes. And it's super easy to do. I love giving this as homework to my coaching clients because it's just adding a little layer of awareness on top of activities that they are already doing. So it doesn't feel as much like homework. Here's what you do. You get a piece of paper. On the left-hand side, you write down the times, like, whenever you kind of start your day. So 6 a.m. all the way down through whenever you end your day, say 11 p.m. That would be a really long day. I recommend you sleep more than that, but that's often what my day looks like. So keep that paper with you and say that you are working at a desk a lot of the day, as many of us are. You can have it there on your desk. You could also keep this on your phone. But I like having it on paper because I can remember, then I see that visual aid and it reminds me to write stuff down. Now, here's what you're going to write. As you move through your day, you're going to write down what you're doing. And you only need to do this for one day. Okay. It seems like a lot, but it's really not a big deal. So you're going to write down your activity. So, okay, it's 6 a.m. I am making coffee. It is 6:30 a.m. I am making my daughter's favorite recipe, honey toast, which is honey, peanut butter, cinnamon, and toast. Oh, my producer keeps telling me that my cord is hitting the microphone. Sorry about that background noise. I hope that's not bothering you. All right, so you write down your activity. Now, this is where the layer of awareness comes in. You're going to write down your energy level. So, did your energy go up? Put an up arrow. Did your energy stay the same? Put a sideways arrow, energy neutral. And if your energy went down, put a down arrow. So it's super simple so far, right? I just write down what I'm doing and an arrow. Third step is, and this, you can do this at the end of the day after you're reviewing your log, is if your energy went down, what's one little baby step that you could take that would allow you to generate more energy? Here are some options for that. You could delegate it. You could decide not to do the task at all. You could delete it or dump it. Or you could decide to do it differently. And if you want to do it differently, the big key is look at how you are when you're in your zone of genius. I know for me, I'm in my zone of genius when I am being really flowy and creative and expressive. That's a big piece of my own zone of genius as an Enneagram type 4, is my self-expression, my artistry. So I can bring my artistry into almost any activity that I can think of. As I make honey toast, I can be dancing, I can be singing. I often am doing these things. As I'm eating breakfast with my kids, this morning we were reading about dance steps in the book Curious George Goes to a Dance Party, another personal favorite. And we made a little dancing map with the footprints and we put it on the floor. And after we finished eating our breakfast, we learned how to do the box step. Super hard for a 4-year-old, really good reminder for me. I haven't done that since my one horrible year of cotillion a long, long time ago. So there are things that you can do that you could add, or you could just do it differently and approach it with a different type of energy yourself that could really help you generate more energy. So this tool is cool because it's not just helping you to get aware of how are you spending your time and what's the impact on your energy level, which is a good indication of what's really within your zone of genius, but it also is empowering, right? It's putting you in that position where you are the creator of a new reality where you are going to get to live primarily in your zone of genius. And I know what you might be thinking right now because I've heard it so many times, which is, no, I can't. Here are the reasons why you might think that you can't. I can't because if I even try to live in my zone of genius primarily, I'm going to lose my job. People will think I'm ridiculous. Everyone's going to say I'm an entitled prima donna. You might even be saying that about me right now because you're not there yet. People will say you're not going to make any money. I might get judged by my parents, my partner, my workmates, my roommates, my friends. Or I don't even have a zone of genius. I don't think I'm genius at anything. And I can tell you the answer to that last question is definitely a no, because we all have a zone of genius to claim. Many of us decided it wasn't valuable a long, long time ago. Maybe we were even made fun of or punished for having this zone of genius. Now, I shared with you that my zone of genius is in self-expression and artistry. And as a preschooler, I like to sing Broadway musicals while I was swinging on the swings at preschool. This didn't make me a very popular person by the time I got to kindergarten. So it wasn't something that I thought was allowed. And it took me a while to reclaim that really flamboyant artistic part of myself. Right. So it's not like these other consequences might not be there. But what I want to tell you and stand for is, once you are really aligned with yourself, that you're committed to this is how you're going to live, a lot of those seemingly negative consequences either stop mattering or they go away. People respond much more to your energy, your context, your self attitude than they do to anything that you are doing. People are looking at, how do you feel about this activity? Most of us don't really know how to evaluate or judge each other truly. We're picking up on each other's attitudes and we are simply reinforcing them. Now, it could be that you are in a job that requires you to do a lot of activities that, try as you might, do not feed your soul. They demand gifts that were not given to you at birth, gifts that you have to really effort to do, gifts that might even be just a pain. And this would be kind of in your zones of competence or incompetence, where almost every time you do it, you mess it up. I've had a lot of those in my past work life. Like when I was a waitress, oh my gosh, that was horrifying. The number of things I had to keep track of simultaneously. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world. So thank you to all of the servers out there. But we all have probably experienced jobs where we truly couldn't access our zone of genius very often because the job simply required something else. And now that's a trickier situation, right? And I get it. It may mean that your job is not serving you in living in your zone of genius. This is not to say there's not things that you can't do about it, right? You can negotiate. You can try to get a different job or get a lateral move or a promotion. You can bring a different way of being, different level of energy into that job. You can make little tweaks to make it more you. But even after you've done all of those things, it may still be time to change. And truth be told, a lot of the people that I know who have been really, really successful in making a dramatic leap into their zone of genius have either been ones that had a lot of latitude at work, like they were a leader of some kind, or they were independent. They were a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, a coach, a podcaster, an artist, or they decided to put their zone of genius into their side hustle, their passion projects, their home life. We are alive for many, many hours of the day. And even while we are commuting, there are ways that we can say, okay, now this is the time where I'm going to get to be in my zone of genius. I'm in my zone of genius when I'm talking to a dear friend on the phone, or I'm listening to a book and I'm learning, or I'm imagining myself in a different land. I'm going through the same experiences my characters are. Or I'm sitting here and I'm doing, I've heard that some people do like ab exercises while they're driving, like more power to you. So there are choices that we can make to start bringing our zone of genius into our life outside of work. The goal here isn't perfection. The goal is definitely awareness and then commitment. Once you're aware of what your zone of genius is and you're aware of how often you're actually living there right now, the next step is I'm going to get committed. I'm going to get committed to moving my life in this direction. And I like this rule that I learned from Diana Chapman of the Conscious Leadership Group I just mentioned, which is go slow, but don't stop. Go slow, but don't stop. The idea is if we keep our momentum in any direction, we are going to get somewhere. So rather than giving up and going into victim mode and saying, I can't do it, I can't change my job, that's something that they can do, but I can't do it. And this sucks and it's always going to suck. And I really, really don't like it. And it's not fair. And I'm just going to be satisfied being unsatisfied. No, 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 no. That is not serving you. It is not serving anyone. It's definitely not serving your family. It's not serving your colleagues. It's not serving your boss. It's not serving your company. It is not serving your community. It's not serving the world. When you're walking around like a sourpuss like that, you're not helping anybody out. Now, pull yourself up and start taking some responsibility for creating some changes in your life. I'm not saying they have to be dramatic changes, even if your mindset changes. That is massive. In fact, it's probably the most massive thing that you can do. So the idea here is we are responsible. We are the only leaders of our own lives. We are the only ones with the power to genuinely transform our lives and our experience of living. If we're not willing to be the leader, no one else is there to take that job. We're the only ones who are responsible and who can be responsible. So it may be that you are in victim mode about that. I don't blame you. I have been there a million times, and truthfully, there's nothing more human. But the way to get out of that mode is into taking personal responsibility and doing it from a place of loving curiosity. So if you're feeling really stuck on this and you can't think of ways that you could improve things, then just get curious. Like, I wonder how another person might make a change. I wonder, how is it helping me actually that I'm not making these changes? Why is that what I seem to be doing? I notice that I seem to be wanting to be stuck. I seem really emphatic about that I'm stuck. How is that serving me in some way? It might be serving me because I'm totally scared to take action, and it's helping me to stay safe. Okay, so I'm going to love myself as being totally scared of taking action. I'm going to let myself stay safe right now. If you're feeling safe, that might also be the path for you to get more into your zone of genius. How can we make this safe? How can you support yourself in making it safe to get into your zone of genius more? Now, the benefits of being in your zone of genius are your energy will be much, much higher, and it will be much more positive, which is more attractive of all of the good things around you that you want. The people who come to you when you're in that positive, heightened energy state are going to be there in support of you. And they're going to be ones who help you stay in that positive energy state. You will more easily notice, because your brain will be more creative with that lowered stress level and that heightened energy. You will more easily notice the resources around you that can be supportive of you living your dreams. So when we walk around, really grumpy and we are in victim mode, we're in drama, we're below the line, maybe we're blaming, or we're just trying to avoid thinking about something. Usually our perception is quite dampened. We could walk through a room that has, that golden ticket right there on the ground, that key that's going to help us unlock the life of our dreams. And yet we walk right past it because all we're thinking about is we're replaying the same scene again and again and again in our minds of what it is that we're not wanting. And we walk right past it. So when we can give ourselves that sense of ease by being in our zone of genius, it's like your life gets exponentially better because you suddenly begin realizing all the things around you that are right there for the taking that are going to lead you to the life of your dreams. Another big benefit of being in your zone of genius is you're not going to get so burnt out anymore. You could really avoid burnout completely by balancing out the different activities that you do in your zone of genius. In next week's episode, we will be talking about the restorative elements of your zone of genius and how you can balance your time spent in the active modes of zone of genius and the restorative modes so that you can really have a nice rhythm that is healing for you and sustainable. Now, if all of this feels kind of selfish and you have some self judgments about it, it seems like this is something that, it really wouldn't be right for you to spend time on this right now. It wouldn't be right for you to make the changes. Maybe you don't deserve it. This is something that would be really self indulgent to do. I've heard all of those voices before myself. I want to leave you with this thought that the planet actually needs you and me and all of us here listening on this podcast to step in. For us to address the challenges that we're facing as a planet, we all must bring our gifts to bear. With all of us bringing our natural gifts, our unique perspective on things, our unique angle, that unique way that we can deliver those gifts that nobody else can. If we can bring all of that, we actually can help to reverse climate change. We can help to overcome inequality in society. We can help to heal the hurt people who are walking around creating a lot of destruction. Even at a smaller level, we can show up better even just going to the coffee shop, and sometimes that one smile you give somebody can really save their life. And there are lots of times that story has been true. So this is not a selfish act. This is a courageous, fearless leadership act that is one that is loving. It is for us. It is for love. It is not for you. It may even be really challenging to get there. Almost everybody that I know who's really transformed their life to be living in their zone of genius had to go through some pretty significant hurdles to get there. Some of which are the mindset variety, and others are, renegotiating relationships or renegotiating agreements or changing a job. All of that it's selfless. Okay, so I want to reassure you that this is an act of service that I'm counting on you to step into. And I'm here to support you, and our community is here to support you. Our Facebook community is here to support you. And I also really invite you to bring support in. So you can do a lot of really productive zone of genius work in a group. You can do it with friends and other leaders who really want to also step into their zone of genius. This is part of why I created the Zone of Genius course, so that we can all do it together and be with each other here. Here on my team, we are all going to be doing the Zone of Genius activities together. And, part of it is scary. I know for myself personally, I get scared of asking for this feedback from others. I don't know why. I know it's specifically going to be positive feedback. That's what I'm asking for. But I think it's embarrassing to have so much attention that I'm asking for it to be directed at me. And I know that probably seems like you might be rolling your eyes right now because here I am on a freaking podcast. But this is something that feels very intimate about this and confronting. I've had some clients who gather the feedback and sit on it for a week until they finally come back to our in-person session, and they still haven't read the feedback yet. And it's just too scary, too confronting. That's okay too. So find a buddy to work with, join our group, get on our Facebook community, and you can work this stuff with others. That's totally, there's no limit to the amount of support that you can give yourself. It's all okay. And in fact, it's probably also of service, because if you can share this work with somebody else, then they get to benefit from it too. And so does their whole entire sphere of influence in the world around them. So I want you to get to know your zone of genius. Look at your life now. How are you spending your time? What are you responsible for? And then on a day to day basis, how is the way that you're living impacting your energy, and what can you do about it? I want you to get really creative about creating a new vision of your life, a clear and compelling vision that is you living in your zone of genius, and be willing to take those baby steps to move toward it. It doesn't mean you have to get there right now. In fact, go slow, but just don't stop. Once you're on the other side of this and you know what your zone of genius is, or you're getting more clarity, I invite you to begin to broadcast that to others and to stand for it. So share it with your manager, share it with your spouse, share it with your family, and share it with the people that you touch on a day-to-day basis. Like, I'm doing this activity. I've learned that I'm most in my zone of genius. I'm most in flow, and I'm creating the most value in the most sustainable way when I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And that's what really gives me life and energizes me. And I'm going to be spending more and more time doing those things. And I'm redesigning some parts of my life and some agreements that I have with other people so that I can begin to work more and more in my zone of genius and live in my zone of genius more and more. Now, as you might imagine, as you expand the amount of time that you're spending in your zone of genius, other things may need to drop off the list. Awesome, because things that don't give you life take your life, and we don't want that. So, big piece of this is getting willing to say no. So, here's the last exercise I'll walk you through. What are you doing now where only part of you wants to do it and another part says no? In other words, what are you doing now in your life where you don't have a whole body yes? What are you doing now in your life where you're not living in your zone of genius? What are you doing now in your life where it's actually working against you living in your zone of genius most of the time? Especially the stuff in your zone of incompetence, your zone of competence. Let's get rid of the zone of incompetence completely and minimize the zone of competence. That's our goal. As you begin to say no, you may be confronted with some scarcity mindsets that sound like this: I'm not doing enough. I'm not helping enough if I say no. I'm not being supportive enough. I'm not good enough if I don't do this activity and try really, really hard. I'm not going to be successful enough. I'm not making enough money if I do this. I won't be safe enough or secure enough in my role. I won't be lovable enough. Most likely, a lot of these things will come up. That's okay. Greet each of them as an opportunity to identify a new self-limiting belief you have. And it's okay for those self-limiting beliefs to come with you on the journey of moving your life more and more into your zone of genius. It gets easier. In fact, it gets kind of addictive. I did a massive no diet recently, and it was so much fun. Now, it's okay to allow all of that scarcity, all those fears, all the not enoughness, to allow that to be there with you and bring it along with you in your bag uh, as you go on this journey of moving your life more into your zone of genius. It's okay to have those beliefs at the exact same time as you take action. That's probably what it's going to look like. I definitely still have a little bit of I'm not enough in my purse with me every single day. I work on it, but I do take it to therapy and I take it to my coaching sessions and I'm working on it, but it's still there. And that is totally fine, makes me human. I'm not sure it's ever going to completely go away. It's not going to stop me from taking the baby steps that I am comfortable making and getting more and more courageous about moving into my zone of genius. So let's recap. Number one, when you want to move into living primarily in your zone of genius, the number one step is know your genius. Know what your genius is. Number two, do a calendar and work duty review. Look at how you're spending your time, look at what you're responsible for, and just take stock of what's in your zone of genius and what's not. Number three, do an energy audit. Looking at how the activities that you do today or tomorrow when you do this activity, how do those activities increase, decrease, or maintain your energy level? And if it decreases your energy, what can you do about it? Getting really creative there. Number four, broadcast and stand for living in your zone of genius. Share it with others and begin to renegotiate your agreements so that you're living more and more in that zone. Finally, NO, be willing to say no. Be willing to confront any scarcity mindsets that you might have around not doing enough, being enough, having enough. And be willing to let those be there and bring them with you, even as you courageously move through renegotiating your life and designing the life of your dreams. Probably the most powerful thing that you can do here is just get committed. Get committed. Get a vision in place where you can really see what your life might look like there. That itself might be scary. And move slowly, but don't stop as you move through all of these steps. There's a lot of support out there for you. We will create links in the show notes. If this was really interesting to you, I definitely encourage you to download our worksheets for this workshop. If you do that, we're going to make sure that you are the first to get invited to our Zone of Genius course, which is going to be the pilot version of the course where I'll be spending extra time with you, extra one-on-one attention. So please go today and download that. There's lots of other books and things you can check out. All of it will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today. It means a lot to me and to you and to the world that you are showing up for yourself to grow. Join us next week where we talk about the restorative zone of genius, that dark side of the moon where we go to be in private and to feed our souls in a way that is unique and special only to us. Have a great week and we'll see you then. Aloud. For more information, check out my website, caneel.com/podcast, CANEEL. Caneel.com/podcast, where you can find tons of resources, new episodes, show notes, transcripts, videos, all that good stuff to deepen your learning experience. Also, follow me on social. Send me your feedback there. Ask me your questions. I'm Caneel.is on Instagram and @Caneel on Twitter. Allowed. You are allowed to be whole.